is treated like a flaw. Brené Brown completely rewrites that narrative by asserting that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the purest form of courage there is. It takes no bravery to walk through life pretending. Anyone can put on a mask, fake a smile, or act unaffected. But it takes soul-deep courage to say, I'm not okay, or I don't have the answers, or this matters to me even if I might fail. That's vulnerability, not a confession of weakness, but a powerful declaration that you are willing to be seen. It's choosing to engage with the world without the guarantee of approval or success. It's showing up and allowing yourself to be judged, misunderstood, or even rejected because truth matters more than safety. Brené Brown emphasizes that vulnerability is the birthplace of the most meaningful experiences in life, love, joy, empathy, creativity, belonging. None of these are possible if we stay locked behind the walls we've built to protect ourselves from pain. When we numb ourselves to avoid being vulnerable, we also numb ourselves to everything that gives life depth. You cannot selectively numb emotions. When you shut down sadness, you also shut down joy. When you suppress fear, you stifle excitement. When you hide your failures, you also hide your potential. Vulnerability is the gateway to connection, and without it, we become isolated in our carefully curated lives. We become performers in our own stories, hiding our pain behind filters, our shame behind sarcasm, our needs behind pride. Real connection requires risk, and that risk is only possible through vulnerability. It's not about oversharing or being emotionally reckless. It's about having the strength to be real when it counts the most. Vulnerability is what allows innovation to thrive because it takes courage to create something that might fail. It's the heartbeat of leadership because no one trusts a leader who never admits a mistake. It's the foundation of relationships because love cannot exist where honesty is withheld. Vulnerability is the willingness to try, to care, to hope, knowing full well that the outcome may hurt, yet we do it anyway. Not because we are fearless, but because we are brave enough to know that authenticity matters more than comfort. It is the secret ingredient to living a life of meaning rather than one of quiet desperation. Vulnerability is not the enemy. It is the path to everything we are truly seeking beneath the noise: acceptance, belonging, healing, and the freedom to live unhidden from ourselves. Shame is a deeply rooted, paralyzing emotion that tells us we are unworthy of love, connection, or belonging. It doesn't whisper about what we did, it screams about who we are. While guilt says, I did something bad, shame says, I am bad, and that small but crucial difference can be the difference between growth and destruction. Brené Brown describes shame as the swampland of the soul, not because we all live in it, but because we all pass through it at some point, and how we move through it shapes the way we show up in the world. The insidious thing about shame is that it gains power through silence. It festers in our minds when we bury it beneath layers of denial, secrecy, and self-blame. The more we hide it, the more it controls us. It isolates us, whispers lies that we're the only ones who feel this broken, this unworthy, this unseen. Shame creates an emotional prison that locks us away from authenticity. It convinces us that if people really knew us, the real us, they would leave. So we pretend, we perfect, we perform. We try to cover the parts of ourselves that feel too ugly, too messy, too flawed. But the more we armor up, the more disconnected we become. We start believing that the only way to be accepted is to hide who we really are. And that belief is soul-crushing. It doesn't just rob us of happiness. It robs us of intimacy, of meaning, of freedom. Because what we don't talk about owns us. What we don't bring into the light multiplies in the dark. Shame isn't just painful, it's debilitating. It shows up in addiction, eating disorders, rage, depression, perfectionism, people-pleasing. It infiltrates every part of our lives when we let it stay silent. But the antidote to shame isn't confidence, it's connection. And the bridge to that connection is empathy. Empathy is what tells us You're not alone. It doesn't rush to fix us. It doesn't offer advice or try to make the discomfort go away. Empathy simply sits with us in the dark and says, "Me too. I've been there." That presence, that acceptance, that moment of shared humanity is what breaks the shame cycle. The second we speak shame out loud in a safe space, it begins to lose its grip. It can't survive being named. It can't withstand compassion. It melts in the warmth of understanding. We are so often afraid to speak our shame because we fear judgment. But the truth is, the very act of owning our story, especially the parts we're afraid to share, is what allows us to take back our power. When we have the courage to tell someone, "I feel like I'm not enough," and they meet us with love instead of rejection, we begin to heal. And the more we practice this, the less power shame has to define us. Brené Brown makes it clear, empathy is not just kindness, it's a lifeline. It doesn't require us to fix anything. It just asks us to be brave enough to listen, to stay present, and to honor the vulnerability of someone else with our full attention. What's remarkable is that empathy doesn't just free others from shame, it frees us too. It creates a space where real connection can happen. And when we see others in their full truth and love them anyway, we start believing maybe we can be loved in our truth too. Shame cannot survive being seen. It cannot coexist with someone who says, "I hear you. I get it. I'm still here." That is how we reclaim the parts of ourselves we've hidden. That is how we begin to transform pain into purpose. That is how the chains of shame begin to loosen their grip and fall away piece by piece. From the earliest moments of life, we are taught that love and belonging are things we must earn. Through behavior, performance, achievement, appearance, we're conditioned to believe that worthiness is conditional. If we work hard enough, succeed visibly enough, or behave perfectly enough, then we will be loved, then we will be accepted, then we will belong. This mindset is so deeply ingrained that we often don't even recognize it. It shows up when we hide parts of ourselves out of fear of rejection. It shows up when we overwork to prove our value. It shows up when we settle in relationships where we are not truly seen because we believe that some connection is better than no connection at all. But Brené Brown disrupts this toxic cycle with a powerful truth: you are worthy of love and belonging, not if not when, but now, just as you are. This idea goes against everything that perfectionism and shame culture have taught us. It dismantles the idea that we must hustle for our worth, that we must shrink ourselves to fit in or inflate ourselves to be impressive. Real belonging can never be achieved through performance, because true belonging is about being accepted without having to become someone else. It is about being welcomed, not despite our flaws, but with them. Yet so many of us walk through life believing that if we just fix this one thing, our body, our job, our past, our personality, then we'll finally be worthy. But the finish line keeps moving. No amount of external success will fill the internal void created by self-rejection. Self-worth is not a prize to be won. It is a truth to be claimed. And until we believe that we are enough, we will continue to chase love that feels just out of reach. We will keep giving others the power to define our value. We will stay in relationships, jobs, and spaces that require us to trade authenticity for acceptance. But belonging that demands your silence, your compliance, or your perfection is not belonging, it's fitting in. And fitting in is the opposite of being loved for who you really are. Brené Brown teaches that the most courageous act is to own your story, especially the parts you've been told are unlovable, and to still stand in front of the world and say, "I am worthy." There is a quiet kind of power that comes with self-acceptance. It doesn't scream, it doesn't boast. It simply lives in the unwavering belief that nothing about your soul has to be edited to be loved. That belief transforms how you move through the world. You stop over-explaining. You stop begging for validation. You stop entering spaces trying to prove you deserve to be there. You begin to show up fully, speak honestly, and take up space without apology, because you're no longer trying to become enough. You're operating from the truth that you already are. When you internalize this worthiness, it also changes the kind of love you accept. You no longer tolerate conditional affection. You stop settling for relationships where your value is tied to what you do rather than who you are. You begin to recognize that love built on performance is not love, it's approval. And approval can be revoked the moment you stop performing. But love that honors your humanity, that holds space for your messiness, your tenderness, your contradictions, that is the kind of love that liberates. And you can only receive it when you first believe you're worthy of it. The journey to embracing this truth is not easy. It requires unlearning years of messages that told you to be quieter, prettier, smarter, more successful, less emotional, more likable. It means facing the painful memories where your authenticity was punished or ignored. It means rewriting the story you've been telling yourself, the one that says you're not good enough, and replacing it with a story rooted in compassion, dignity, and truth. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a person to be loved. That love begins with how you speak to yourself, how you hold space for your own pain, and how you choose to show up every day, not as a perfect version of yourself, but as the real one. This shift doesn't just impact you, it ripples outward. When you embody self-worth, you give others permission to do the same. You stop feeding into toxic norms that equate value with achievement. You create spaces where people feel seen. You become a mirror that reflects wholeness back to others. Brené Brown reminds us that love and belonging are not scarce commodities. There's enough to go around, but they can only be truly experienced when we stop disqualifying ourselves from receiving them. We don't need to wait until we are thinner, richer, more successful, more polished, or more anything to be enough. Enoughness is not a future destination. It's a birthright. Authenticity is often talked about as if it's a trait, something you're either born with or not. But Brené Brown reframes it as a practice, something you choose daily, moment by moment. It's not a one-time declaration that this is who I am. It's a continuous, intentional commitment to showing up in your truth, especially when the world pressures you to be someone else. Authenticity means rejecting the temptation to fit neatly into boxes created by culture, family, or fear. It means choosing to tell the truth about your feelings, your needs, and your boundaries, even when that truth is inconvenient, misunderstood, or unappreciated. And that kind of honesty isn't easy. It's messy, vulnerable, and often lonely. But it's also the only path to real freedom. We spend years, sometimes our whole lives, crafting versions of ourselves that feel acceptable, versions that meet expectations, avoid rejection, and keep the peace. We wear social masks that tell people, I'm fine, when we're breaking, or I've got it all together when we're falling apart. These masks are often rewarded. We're praised for being agreeable, for being productive, for being polite, even if none of those things reflect our truth. But each time we choose performance over authenticity, we pay a price. We disconnect from ourselves. We abandon the parts of us that don't fit the script. And eventually, the weight of pretending becomes unbearable. Letting go of who you think you're supposed to be is terrifying because that version has often kept you safe. It's the one that helped you fit in at school, get praise at work, or be accepted in your community. But what it rarely gives you is peace. What it rarely brings is a sense of wholeness. When your outer life becomes a costume, your inner life starts to suffocate. You may be liked by many but known by no one. You may be admired but never understood. You may be surrounded but still feel painfully alone. Authenticity invites you to stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out. To be authentic is not to be perfect. It's not about always being happy, positive, or in control. It's about being real. It's about telling the truth even when your voice trembles. It's about admitting you don't have the answers, that you're still figuring it out. It's about allowing yourself to be seen, not just in your strength, but in your struggle. Brené Brown says that authenticity is the daily decision to be honest with who you are. That means setting boundaries when it's easier to say yes. It means expressing your truth when silence would be more comfortable. It means standing alone rather than losing yourself in a crowd. This practice is made even harder by a world that constantly sells us images of who we're supposed to be. Social media curates perfection. Corporate environments reward conformity. Family systems may demand obedience. In the face of all that noise, choosing authenticity can feel like rebellion, but it's also where your power lies. The moment you stop performing for acceptance is the moment you begin to connect with people on a real level. Not because they like the version of you you've created, but because they love the truth of who you are. Authenticity also requires self-awareness. You cannot live in your truth if you don't know what that truth is. That means taking time to ask hard questions. What do I believe in? What matters to me? What am I afraid of? Where am I pretending? Where am I betraying myself to make others comfortable? These questions are uncomfortable, but necessary. Because until we confront the places where we've gone into hiding, we can't choose to come out of them. And it's only when we show up as ourselves that we can experience the kind of connection and fulfillment we're all longing for. There is courage in being seen as you are. In a culture that thrives on comparison, it takes strength to say, I'm not trying to be better than anyone else. I'm just trying to be fully myself. Authenticity strips away the need to compete. It silences the voice that says you need to prove your worth. It replaces performance with presence. It invites others to lower their masks too, creating a ripple effect of permission that can change conversations, relationships, and even communities. What makes authenticity so challenging is that it guarantees vulnerability. When you stop hiding, you open yourself to criticism, misunderstanding, and rejection. But you also open yourself to something far more powerful, being truly known, being seen and still loved, being heard and still valued. The cost of authenticity is high. The cost of self-abandonment is higher. Because every time you choose who you think you're supposed to be over who you really are, you lose a little more of yourself. You begin to believe the lie that your truth is too much, too complicated, too unworthy to be held. But it is exactly that truth that holds your power, your beauty, and your belonging. Courage is often misunderstood as a quality reserved for heroes, something loud, obvious, and unshakable. But Brené Brown redefines it in a way that speaks to the real human experience. She reminds us that courage doesn't appear fully formed in moments of triumph. It is forged in the fire of discomfort, pain, and failure. Real courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward while carrying it. It is not born in moments where everything feels certain, but in the messy, unclear, vulnerable moments where we risk failing, falling, or being seen too clearly. That's where courage takes root, in the heart of struggle, not in the safety of comfort zones. We live in a world that glorifies ease and control. We are told that success comes to those who plan well, work hard, and avoid failure. But courage isn't built in a vacuum of perfection. It grows through emotional bruises, missteps, and moments of reckoning. It begins when we choose to stand up again after falling down, when we confront hard truths about ourselves, or when we speak the words we've been too afraid to say. It's in those quiet, often unseen moments, sitting alone with your pain, choosing to tell the truth, owning a mistake, that courage is formed. Not in being untouched by life, but in being touched deeply by it and choosing to show up anyway. Struggle strips away illusions. It removes the layers we use to protect ourselves and reveals who we really are. When everything falls apart, when the certainty we once clung to vanishes, when we feel completely undone, this is where the seed of courage is planted. It's the willingness to rebuild when you don't know how, to rise with shaky legs and a heart full of doubt. It's not glamorous or graceful. It often looks like crying in the dark, questioning everything, and still deciding to take the next step. Struggle invites us into the kind of transformation that comfort never could. It demands that we become more than we thought we could be, not by denying pain, but by facing it. In comfortable places, we don't often question ourselves. We don't stretch or evolve because there's no need to. Comfort encourages complacency. It tells us we're okay as long as we don't rock the boat. But struggle demands movement. It forces growth. It calls us to confront who we've been and decide who we're becoming. Brené Brown makes it clear it's in the struggle that we become brave, when our hearts are breaking and we still choose love, when our plans fall apart and we still choose hope, when our voices tremble but we speak anyway. Those are the moments that define us, that shape us, that build a kind of strength that cannot be learned any other way. Courage born from comfort is often shallow, performative, and conditional. It's the kind that disappears when real challenge arrives. But courage born from struggle is enduring. It's the kind that remembers what it cost you to keep going. It carries the wisdom of pain and the weight of survival. It becomes part of your character, not just something you access occasionally. This kind of courage doesn't need to be seen or celebrated. It just is. It lives in your everyday decisions to stay true to yourself, to heal what hurts, and to trust life again after being disappointed. Struggle refines you. It doesn't define you, but it reveals your depth. There is a sacredness to struggle that is rarely acknowledged. We want the growth without the discomfort, the wisdom without the wounds, the transformation without the trial. But it doesn't work that way. Struggle teaches you things that books never could. It teaches empathy because you've been broken too. It teaches humility because you've faced your limits. It teaches resilience because you've rebuilt from nothing. And out of those lessons, courage is born, not as a performance, but as a quiet truth that says, I've been through darkness and I still choose light. You don't get that kind of courage from a perfect life. You earn it through scars. People often wait to feel brave before they act, but Brene flips that narrative. Courage is not a feeling, it's a choice. You act courageously, and the feeling may come later. It's in the action itself, not the absence of fear, where courage lives. You may still be terrified. You may still feel small or uncertain, but you move anyway. That's what makes it courage. It's not instinctive. It's not automatic. It's something you decide again and again, despite the internal and external resistance. And the more you do it, the stronger that muscle becomes. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to see that you can survive hard things, not just once, but repeatedly. And that changes how you live. It changes how you love. It changes what you believe you're capable of. Connection is not a luxury, it's a fundamental human need. From the moment we are born, we are wired for it. It's in our biology, our psychology, our very survival. We are meant to live in relationship with others, with the world, and with ourselves. And yet, in the modern age, real connection has become increasingly rare. We are surrounded by people, flooded with digital interactions, and bombarded by curated images of lives that look connected. But so many of us feel unseen, misunderstood, and emotionally isolated. Brené Brown puts her finger on the pulse of this crisis by reminding us that true connection doesn't come from proximity, likes, or attention. It comes from being seen, fully, deeply, honestly. And that kind of visibility requires vulnerability. To be seen means to let someone witness not just your strengths, but your fears, your flaws, your raw, unpolished truth. It means risking judgment, rejection, and misunderstanding. And because of that risk, many people choose to stay hidden. We wear emotional masks that say, I'm fine, or I don't care, or this doesn't bother me, even when we are aching inside. We keep conversations shallow, relationships surface, level, and emotions guarded. We become masters of avoidance. We fear that if we are truly seen, we will be found lacking. that if someone looks too closely, they will walk away. But ironically, it's in this hiding that we create the very loneliness we're trying to avoid, because connection cannot happen where authenticity is absent. Brene teaches that connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. But that energy can only exist if we allow ourselves to be known. That means breaking down the walls of perfectionism and performance. It means stepping into spaces with honesty, even when it makes us uncomfortable. It means choosing depth over ease. And in a world that often rewards image over substance, that choice can feel countercultural. Yet it is the only way to forge bonds that are real, lasting, and nourishing to the soul. We often believe that if we show our true selves, our insecurities, our trauma, our complexity, we will become burdens. So we retreat, we withhold, we edit. But what we forget is that people can only love us to the extent that they know us. If we hide the real parts, we rob others of the chance to meet us in our truth. We settle for connection that is partial, and that partial connection leaves us feeling lonely even when we're not alone. True intimacy begins when someone says, "Me too," and means it, not because your experience is identical, but because they've also known fear, loss, doubt, or longing. That shared humanity is the thread that weaves us together, and it cannot be accessed unless we are willing to be visible. There is tremendous bravery in allowing yourself to be seen, in saying, "This is where I'm struggling, this is what I want," or "this is what hurt me." These moments of openness are uncomfortable, but they are also the birthplace of connection. They are how we find our people, the ones who don't just like the image we project, but who truly see and accept us. And this doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. It means being intentional, choosing the right spaces, and having the courage to be real with those who have earned our trust. As Brene says, vulnerability without boundaries isn't vulnerability, it's oversharing. But when it's done with care, authenticity becomes a bridge, not a weapon. Connection is also not about being understood perfectly. It's about feeling accepted in our humanity. Sometimes the deepest connections come not from fixing each other's problems, but simply from saying, "I'm here with you." That presence, that emotional availability is what so many people are starving for. Not advice, not solutions, but solidarity. A sense that we don't have to carry the weight of our experiences alone. That someone else is willing to sit in the dark with us and hold space without trying to escape or correct what we're feeling. That is the kind of connection that heals. The irony is that we often try to earn connection through perfection, when it is our imperfections that make us relatable. Our shared struggles, not our filtered success, are what draw others close. When you reveal that you felt insecure, scared, heartbroken, or not enough, you give others permission to admit the same. And in that mutual recognition, shame begins to dissolve. Brene often says that connection requires the courage to be seen, not just in your highlight reel, but in your behind the scenes reality. That courage is what builds bridges. That honesty is what fosters belonging. That willingness is what opens the door to love, friendship, and the kind of community we all crave at the deepest level. In a world that idolizes independence, it's easy to believe that strength means doing everything on your own. From a young age, we are conditioned to strive for self-sufficiency. We learn to carry our pain quietly, to solve our problems privately, and to present ourselves as capable, composed, and in control, especially when we're struggling the most. We're taught that asking for help is a last resort, a sign of failure or weakness, something to be ashamed of. But Brené Brown reminds us that this belief is not only harmful, it's entirely false. The truth is, we were never meant to do life alone. We are relational beings hardwired for support, connection, and interdependence. Our greatest healing doesn't come through solitary strength. It comes through shared humanity. The idea of doing it alone may sound empowering on the surface, but it often masks deep fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of being judged, fear of being a burden. So instead of reaching out, we withdraw. We suffer in silence, overwhelmed and isolated, pretending we're fine. We minimize our needs and suppress our emotions to maintain the illusion of control. And yet inside, we ache for someone to notice. Someone to say, you don't have to carry this by yourself. But we've built such high walls that no one can see over them, let alone step inside. The longer we keep everything inside, the heavier it becomes, and that emotional weight begins to affect everything, our relationships, our health, our joy, our peace of mind. Brené's message dismantles this toxic narrative of hyper-independence by affirming that reaching out is not weakness. It's courage in its rawest form. It takes strength to say, I can't do this alone. It takes vulnerability to ask for support when pride says, you should have this figured out by now. But vulnerability is not a liability. It's the very doorway to the connection we need. When we allow ourselves to be seen in our need, we invite others to meet us with empathy, with care, with presence. And often, the people around us are not unwilling to help. They just don't know we need it because we've become so skilled at hiding it. There is a quiet revolution in choosing to rely on others, not in a dependent or passive way, but in a way that honors the truth of our interconnection. We are not meant to be everything to everyone, and we are not meant to carry everything alone. The pressure to constantly be strong, composed, and emotionally invincible leads to burnout, anxiety, and deep feelings of disconnection. Real strength is about knowing when to hold firm and when to lean in. When we open ourselves to the support of others, we create space for honesty, for rest, for renewal. We create relationships where reciprocity thrives, where giving and receiving flow freely without keeping score. We must also unlearn the shame we carry around needing help. So many people internalize the belief that if they are struggling, it means they are failing. But struggle is not a reflection of failure. It's a reflection of humanity. Everyone, at some point, reaches the edge of their capacity. Everyone knows what it's like to feel lost, overwhelmed, or broken. But it's in those moments that we need each other the most. Community is not just a concept. It's a necessity. Whether it's a conversation with a trusted friend, a hand on your shoulder, a shared cry, or someone simply sitting with you in silence, these are the lifelines that remind us we are not alone in our pain. And when we allow ourselves to be helped, we give others permission to do the same. We model a new way of living, one where vulnerability is met with grace, not shame. We break the cultural expectation that everyone should suffer silently and show only strength. We remind each other that we don't have to earn support by being perfect, productive, or problem-free. We are worthy of support simply because we are human. Brené Brown's work shows us that asking for help is not giving up, it's stepping into the kind of bravery that builds real, lasting resilience. In truth, none of us make it through life unscathed. We all have our seasons of struggle, our dark nights of the soul, our moments of questioning everything. And in those times, what heals us is not self-sufficiency, it's solidarity. The moments when someone looks us in the eye and says, "Me too." The moments when we cry and someone stays. The moments when we don't have to explain ourselves because someone just understands. That is the kind of connection that sustains us. Not a connection based on perfection or performance, but one rooted in presence, empathy, and shared truth. When we give ourselves permission to be held, we begin to heal not just individually, but collectively.